This is part one of a two-part series on how to draw the eye. So you want to draw a picture of an eye. Well, let's do that. Um, First of all, you need to consider the dimensions, or well, how big the eye tends to be, its parts. One of the ways we do that is we consider that the iris is about half the size of the visible eye. So we're going to use that as a model to draw this. I'm also going to put a reflection of a window, some eyelashes, and this little doohickey in the corner. So let's get started. I'm going to be drawing this on about 80-pound drawing paper. I'm going to use a number 2 pencil, rolled up paper, a blending stick, a blunt blending stick, and a white eraser, and a little bit of a kneaded eraser. Okay. To begin with, I need to get the proportions correct for this eye. As I mentioned before, the iris tends to be about half the width of the eye from corner to corner. And I'm going to put the inside of the eye on my left, so I'm going to put this line here. I'm going to tilt it down just a little bit. And this line is going to be light. This is going to be large because I want to learn about how an eye is drawn and all the components. I need to draw a circle for the iris. Turns out the iris, the outside of the iris, tends to be quite dark. And iris tends to also be above this center line. So right about there. I need to make a circle. Artists will often use other objects to help draw the shape, and I do want this to be quite round. So I'm going to draw that in, holding my pencil in the center so that it's good. The bottom part of this can be bolder because the outside of the iris tends to be darker. I need to know how big this is, so I'm going to mark the middle of my iris and the width. Now if I measure this is going to be about 1.5 inches. I normally don't measure it. I just go by eye. But today I will, just so you'll know. So from the outside edge, another 1.5 inches. So these are going to be the corners of my eyes. And then this will be the little extra part. Since this is the inside, that's the little doohickey that's in the corner of your eye. Okay. Now the upper eyelid, I want it to go across the top and to kind of crease over, actually overlap the top, maybe a little higher, right about there, come down, right about here, and end in this far side. So I'll draw that arc. Now to do that, I'm going to turn the paper, because my hand, the motor skills or the way my muscles work in my hand, I draw better this way. I need to be brave. I need to draw this all at once, nice and smooth, all the way across the top, looking at my destination, bringing my pen in, and I made it. For the lower eyelid, same thing. I'll start from the same place, but I need to end here. In fact, I'm going to bring it in just slightly shallow of this. In fact, I think I'll bring it just below the line, just a little. I want this eyelid to go just below the iris. So I'll bring it down just below the iris and curve up and end right about here. I'll curve it down and make that little doohickey thing. The rest of the eyelid, tends to be a crease right there. The inside edge tends to be curved up to here, and the bottom eyelid, the inside edge tends to be here. Now I'm just going to draw this in lightly, because this line, I hope you can see it, this line needs to just kiss the bottom of the iris, and it kind of fades into this eyelid here. Yeah, that worked. I think I'm ready to begin. Now I may have made this top part, or this top line, a little too bold. It does need to be erased because this is the top of the eyelid. It doesn't need to be there. So I'm going to erase it with my white eraser, and that shadow of a line will blend in later. I'm also going to erase this straight line, especially out of the white of the eye, because it doesn't need to be there. I can kind of see where it's at, but it just doesn't need to be there at all. And on the outside, the white of the eye side, I'm going to erase right up to my line. And I'll get rid of my line all the way across. Okay? and erase that there. So now I think I'm ready. I can erase through a line just to get rid of it. I'd rather have it gone on both sides than have little stubs sticking out and looking unnatural. So with that done, let's begin. I need to put in my pupil. And now the pupil of the eye I'll make with another circular object that I found. The pupil has to be centered in the iris. It can't not be. If it does, it just doesn't look right. Unless there's a real dramatic turn, if the eye is turned away, the head is turned away, then it's possible. But typically if you're looking straight on, even if an eye is looking in a different direction, straight on, the pupil is always in the center. So we'll put the pupil there. Now how big is a pupil? Well, a pupil is only as big as it needs to be. If it's really bright out, the pupil is going to go small to keep the light out of the eye. And if it's dark out or late in the evening, the pupil is going to be large to let the light in. In this case, it's going to be moderately light environment. So let's begin. The favorite part of drawing tends to be the iris. And in drawing the iris, we're just going to put some lines in. Remember I mentioned that the outside of the iris tends to be dark. And I'm just going to draw some irregularly spaced and irregular distant or length lines from the outside, emphasizing that the outside of the line tends to be dark. And it's hard to get that outside as dark as it needs to be. So I'm going to spend some time there, and I'll pull some lines in. Every line that you draw for this iris needs to go toward the center of the pupil. If it's not, it's going to be noticeable, it's going to be irregular, and it just won't look good. So I'm trying to make this outside. Right now I'm emphasizing thinking about this outside edge, trying to make it dark. So I'm going to speed up the video a little bit. To make it go faster, that's probably better. You can see what I'm doing. I'm actually going to slow down over here because I think I want to put reflection of a window here. And well, the eye's curved, so I'm going to kind of follow the contour of my pupil. And there's my window. I think I'll put it right there. And I put these lines kind of light because, well, I don't want the line itself to be there. I want it to be an edge. And you know, an edge isn't defined by a particular color, but rather a change between shade, tone, or color. So I'm going to put an edge there, and I'll bring my lines right up to it. And when I do my blending, I'll certainly do that there. Now this top part of the eye tends to be darker because we're under the eyelashes. Again, these lines need to go toward the center. And that's hard to do. Not always easy to think about when we're drawing around another object that's not lined up with it. So we're going to make this darker underneath, again because it's under the lashes. We'll do the same thing with the pupil. We'll start and we'll pull lines again straight away right off this line. Now the inside of the pupil is going to be all black, and we could have drawn that first, but then we would smear it all over, so we're going to draw that as one of the last things we do in the center of the eye. But this edge, this inside edge, needs to be fairly dark. We can go through this line because that is where the pupil is, and it was going to be dark on the other side. But we certainly want to be a little irregular, you know, as the iris comes together. Now I'm going to add some very narrow lines, very pointed lines. They can go from the inside out or the outside in. Okay, they really shouldn't be, oh, they have to be straight, or they have to be rather toward the center of the eye. Let's see what we have. So using this rolled up blending stick, this blunt rolled up paper, I'll start to do the edge. Now again, I want this outside edge to be dark. I don't want to rub stuff too much away. So I'll be pulling in from this outside edge toward the center. in the center of this wheel, or this part here, I actually do want it to be lighter. So I'm going to do a lot of my rubbing on the outside and try to keep it or confine it to be there. Then I'll occasionally pull it in. And we are going to soften a lot of these lines by doing this. As we go around now, we're going to take care to make our strokes. And this is darker up here. And some of this is going to be covered by eyelash. Blend in there. In fact, I'm sure I'm going to have to go back and add some darker to that outside edge. So let's speed things up a little bit as we blend things. Okay, let's see if we can fill in this pupil. Now, when I do this, I like to draw in circles, and I make that outside edge of that circle kiss or touch the edge of the iris. This needs to be pretty dark, pretty solid. It does tend to smooth out this paper, so it does make a shiny spot, but when you observe it, if your observer looks straight on, that won't be as obvious. But I want to make it as round so that outer edge is round. Any lines that might be coming into the iris or from the iris into the pupil, I want that to disappear. I don't want any sign of that, and of those lines. I want light to look like it goes into the pupil and just disappears, because that's what it does. So we'll turn this. I don't want any patches in here either. This needs to be uniformly okay. I think we'll keep that for now, and let's work on the eyelids. Now, we've got this turned under eyelid here. We're going to add a little shading to that. There is a crease here. We'll add that. And again, from up here, we're writing on the eyeball. There's a shadow that's darker here. And then the eyelid itself comes in. It tends to be dark on the inside, of course, and the upper edge, and then it gets lighter as it goes out. And then this bottom edge. Now, this bottom eyelid, if you think about it, if you look at other people's eyelids, that bottom of the eyelid itself doesn't have any shade to it. It's actually quite light. The reflection of the light is on it. And the corner of the eyeball, where it disappears behind the eyelid or into the eye socket, that also is a little shaded. So we want this to be kind of irregular. This is going to be a round shape, so we'll contrast it or contour it to be kind of round. And we are, of course, going to go back and blend this. Now, this part over here, where our line was, right here, this part we're going to shade up and create the contour of our eye. But we're also going to plan for this doohickey that's kind of in the corner here. There's a proper name for it, and I might be able to find it. It starts with an M. There's a name for this. It's called a medial canthus, this area here. Let's see what we can do to So there's going to be highlights to this area of skin that's inside there. And these highlights we're going to just leave as, well, as bumps. As bottom line needs to be a lot lighter. So get my eraser. We'll kind of soften it a bit. There we are. Okay. Now we'll start to blend. We'll start on this side. Again, this is where the eyelashes will come out, so this will be darker. And this turn down eyelid, the underside of the eyelid, is there, darker on the inside than the out. There is a line as the eyeball disappears behind into the socket, so we can draw there. Blend this out a bit. We want it to be rounded. This shading isn't smooth either. It's kind of mottled, not too bumpy, but just slightly mottled, so it looks like not an even shade. Okay, so far so good. I need to smooth that out just a little bit more. Use my okay, and the other side, same. Now this is going to be a fold in the skin. We're looking at light reflecting off of something that's smooth, so I'm going to smooth this edge there, and then so that defines where the eye goes into the socket, and we'll pull that out toward the eyeball. Again, the underside of the eyelid at the top is darker. It blends right into that line. Kind of make it roundish. Bottom edge, shadowed some. Okay. We'll just kind of curve that right around. Again, this is rolls in the tissue. It's built up there slightly. Okay. Now this lid, this eyelid that we have, lower eyelid, we want to kind of keep that light colored. We'll kind of shape it here. This is going to be where the eyelid and the eye meet. It rolls back underneath the eyeball itself. Little shadow in the front. Sometimes you can make this reserve a light space right here where it can be where fluid builds up in a reflection, the curve of the reflection. We're going to put that line there. Leave this line as we shade the bottom. We're going to pull this down. This is going to be the bottom of our eyelid. This line needs to almost disappear to the point where I'm actually going to erase it. On the outside of the eye, it doesn't have to be quite as removed, but unless you're using eyeliner, unless your person has eyeliner, that line really isn't seen. It's more of the curve, and it's less shiny. So as long as that line blends away, then we're just fine. Now the eyelashes on the bottom, they tend to be quite faint. Oh, by the way, you do want to brush away any eraser pieces, because if you hit them with your pencil or your blending stick, it'll roll them, and it'll create irregularities that you didn't expect. Do a little bit here, just to put like a shadow there. This is we're going to cover later. But this is where my eyelashes are going to be, lower eyelashes, and I don't want to do, I'll do some blending after I put them in, but not a lot. This will come down, goes up there, rolls over. Okay. There we go, at the bottom of the eye. Now the eyelash looks a little bit wide. One of the ways to thin the eyelash skin there is to bring the eye down just a little, if we can, or raise up. But we're kind of at a disadvantage, so we'll leave it right there. Now I also can put some hints of shadows with my blending stick. Okay. Eyelashes on the bottom of the eye tend to be, well, they tend to go from the outside toward the inside, and they don't go all the way across. And they're quite sparse, really. And they're sometimes irregular. So we're going to draw some lines here. There's two coming from that spot. And not a lot. Some hint at curved eyelashes. Okay, little one. Think that should be good. Okay, and that does look a little harsh, so I'll go back and soften them a little. And by doing that, you could justify it by saying, I've put a slight shadow behind them. Yeah, that's it. Sure. There, so they're slightly softened in there. And let's move on. Now the upper eyelash. The upper eyelash starts well into the eye, and the eyelashes actually go up above, but they come straight out at you. So how do you draw something come straight out at you? Well, it's going to be almost like a little hook shape as it does this. But where the hairs are, since there's so many of them, I'm just going to pre-define those with this little hook shape. And remember when I described the fact that the upper part of the eye is going to be darker? Well, that's because it's behind this. So we're going to continue. So we're going to continue with the eyes. We'll bring this down, and I actually want to kind of fill this space in, so I don't have to worry about it later. Eyelashes tend to go up, but when you get toward the outside, they tend to flatten out a little bit. And of course, they're not perfect. They're a little irregular, almost to the point where they go down. Now we have to go back and add some more. And this is going to be a feminine eye. I'm rolling my pencil as I do this. I don't want these eyelashes to be uniform in their size, in their direction, and length. I want them to be, and I need some curved ones too, so there's some. Again, the farther down we get, the more curved they tend to be. Now right here, we're going to do something that's going to justify and make our window believable. And that is, we're going to reflect some of our eyelashes in our eye. So these are reflections of eyelashes as they go across the top of that window. There's some nice curls. All right. So far, so good. Now, the other part of the eyelid is behind this. It's going to be just above the corner of the eye, and the eyelid will go over and end just above the corner of the eye, right about there. And that eyelid needs to be, well, that's where the eyelid goes back, and so it needs to be shaded there. I'll add a little more graphite to that to add that shade. Okay, add a little more foundation under here. We can, when we shade this, we can kind of hint that this tissue that is up above tends to continue down. We need to blend this but it's only a hint. We're not going to be so obvious. So when we blend it in, there we go. Soften those lines a little. Suggest that our eye is round. Okay. And I think we're just about done.